burden on our residents today and tomorrow. Residents, your city has only one real asset and one source of revenue, and that is the land within the city boundaries. And what cities do or enable with that land can either deplete our overall revenues and increase the burden on taxpayers, or it can enrich the value of that land and lessen the burden on taxpayers. It has been challenging to listen to some of the discussion talking about in-year savings. What this city has done since the 1950s in the form of its urban form and its allowance of sprawl has completely depleted the value of our land and has hamstrung this municipality and its residents with ongoing operational and maintenance costs that are not sustainable. And I'll share a little insight to you. This city has no financial plan B. The costs are not going to get any smaller. So we have to lean into those opportunities that come from our ability to enrich what we have without further adding to more ongoing liability. I want to take you back to the 1950s. Since the 1930s, actually, ongoing discussion about the problems with congestion. And in the 1950s, what the city did was it said, we're going to blow out the lower city. We're going to expropriate land, and we're going to take out impossible on the public realm. And that's the reason when you drive down Main or drive down King, you don't really see businesses, you see billboards. So we have acres and acres and acres of unproductive land that is adding very little to our city coffers. And at the time, when the city fathers did that, they were advised that you are going to risk life and limb when you remove all of this space at the side where people can gather and wait and exchange in commerce. And interestingly enough, in 1962, there was a petition, I believe, of 900 business people who said, you gotta change your mind on this. These one-way streets and the taking away of public space is killing our business. It has killed our business. There was a delegation to then elect Vic Cox, who said, please reverse this. 1 year later, please reverse this. To Councillor Mann's point, the lower city has been a sacrifice zone in order to facilitate and accelerate access to the upper tier of the mountain. And all the lower city is asking for is, we don't want a handout, because that's been the common refrain out there. We're always bailing out the lower city. We just want conditions that are fair and even. What was done was not fair. And there was an acknowledgement that you were going to kill small business. You were going to put, interestingly, an acknowledgement, women and their children at risk. But those cries and that acknowledgement went for naught. I realize I am at my time, Chair, nearing my time. Enabling works help us take back that land enrich that land and to build small business, one business at a time, one exchange at a time, so we can start building up this city, because otherwise we have no plan B. There is no plan B, and this budget, by going through this and performing for clickbait columns about poets, is underserving our city and its future. I will strongly vote against this motion. We cannot afford more of the same of this limited vision, short-term decision-making. This city and its residents today and tomorrow deserve so much better. Thank you. Mayor Horwath, for the final speaker.
Thank you. I'm not going to repeat my position because I think it's pretty clear and people understand it very well. There's one piece of this motion that we keep kind of trying to go back to figure out why is it there? And that would be number 3 of the 3 that are there on the piece of paper. And what I would say is this, as someone who's been around a little bit when it comes to government and various orders of government, and some of the work that we've done right here at this table maybe a couple of years since I've been here. When you're working with the entities that have more money, what you do is you put your best foot forward and then you try to get them to help you even more with the costs. Now, I don't want to think about housing and things like that, but this is a project that we have been committed to for a long time, that we have commitment from the other orders of government, although maybe not as solid as some folks would like. But at the end of the day, we have to put forward a plan. We have to put forward a plan that we're prepared to finance, and then we take that and we try to get them to cover some of the costs of the things that we want to do. And my understanding is that that's what number 3 is all about. Now, I'm not going to ask staff because we have to negotiate those things, and that would be an awful thing to do, is to suggest that, that staff confirm or deny and put them in an awkward spot, because they have a relationship with Metrolinx and they have a job to do on behalf of us, on behalf of the people of the city of Hamilton. But I really worry that there's some suggestion that there's something nefarious happening with number 3. And my experience is that this is how it goes. This is how you work through these challenges. This is how you come up with the path forward and try to get the other orders of government, the ones with bigger pockets, to help us realize our vision in even greater ways. My understanding is that's why this is a necessary marker to put in. This is also, I think, something that will help us when the time comes to determine on the list of enhancements. Here's what we started with in terms of what's in the budget. Here's what hopefully other entities might pick up in terms of costs towards those list of things that we want to see. And so hopefully we end up with a little bit more to play with in terms of, and I don't mean to say play with because it sounds irresponsible, but more that we are able to utilize or earmark for other kinds of initiatives that might be lower down on the list. And so I would just say that, there's a lot of politics, I know, that goes on in this conversation particularly, but there are also practicalities. And I think we need to go back to a place of practicalities to see how we can do the things necessary to embed the resources, the resource commitment that then helps us to leverage perhaps other parties in this project. And that's, I just wanted to opine a little bit on that because I suspect that might be something that's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. So Councillor Jackson has duly moved and he has a seconder, and the motion is on the floor. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I did not hear from the deputy clerk.
Councillor Beatty asked for 1 and 3 to be voted on separately.
Okay, so why don't we just do them one by one?
1 and 3 together. Oh, okay.
So we'll start with the vote then on clauses 1 and 3, and that will be followed by a vote on clause 2.
So 1 and 3 are coupled for a vote right now, just so everybody is aware. 1 and 3 are coupled for a vote right now.
As per my motion.
And so it's Councillor Jackson's motion that you're voting on, okay? So 1 is Sherman King to South End enabling. 3, public realm improvements. That's defeated, 5 to 11. Thank you, members. We are on to
Clause number 2.
clause number 2, thank you. Again, clause number 2 in Councillor Jackson's motion. Thank you. That is defeated 4 to 12. I believe we are on 7.11C. And I will recognize Councillor Tattison, as this is your motion, if folks have it in front of you.
I believe I made an incorrect vote on 1 and 3. I'm not sure how I can address that.
On 1 and 3, you voted no.
It should have been a yes.
So we can take that vote over again. This has been asked right after the vote's been taken. So, yes.
Sorry, Deputy Clerk, I'm just trying to hear you, and I'll look to the clerk, thank you.
So the request was to redo that particular vote, which was received right after the voting of the item before we officially moved another item. So we would be in revote on clauses 1 and 3. I can put them back up on the screen if everybody would like.
Are we not able to just correct his vote? Because in fairness, I'm not responsible for members of this council, and when we leave or when we don't, I don't think the member at the end of the horseshoe probably anticipated the members who asked.
Apologies, we just wanted to get the correct wording from the procedural bylaw, which states in section 6.2 under voting procedures, subsection 8, that when an electronic vote is taken and a member advises the mayor or the chair of the point of privilege with respect to their vote being omitted or in error following and prior to moving on to another item, in In this case, the vote will be considered void and a new electronic vote will be retaken immediately.
Thank you, I appreciate that clarity.
Point of order.
Recognizing Mayor Horvath.
Thank you for this. I just, my point of order is that we have had the same number of councillors around this table for the entire council meeting. Was an important and lengthy conversation. Respectfully, the councillor is the right thing, identifying obviously, but now we have another councillor who is unable. There we go, that's what I was trying to do. We're taking that vote over, Councillor Meekin, thank you.
So, Councillor McMeekin, just to let you know, someone inadvertently around this table made an error in registering their vote on Councillor Jackson's. So the procedural bylaw, we were alerted to that error by the member. The procedural bylaw enables us to retake the vote. So that's, and it's been clarified that we can do that and we have to do that. So I'm going to go back. So what's on the floor for voting is Councillor Jackson's motion with respect to the LRT. What's on the floor for voting is the coupling, so 2 votes. Coupling of 1 and 3, we'll vote on that, and then we'll follow that with the vote on 2, so that the member can register what he wanted to do in the first place, okay? So you're voting on Councillor Jackson's motion now, 1 and 3. Thank you, Janet. Thank you. That is defeated 6 to 10. Okay. Councillor, did you wish revote on this, the second one as well? Just that?
No, I voted correctly.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so that brought to a close. I'll recognize Councillor Cassidy.
This is moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Jeff Beattie. It's transferring funds, 2% of the 2025 levy-supported public works projects to the unallocated capital reserve. I'll read the last 3 whereases. Whereas fiscal responsibility is a priority for the municipality and every expenditure should be evaluated for its impact on taxpayers. Whereas the director and project managers in public works have set budgets for the completion of tax-funded public works projects and contingency funds allowing for an unforeseen setbacks totaling between 10 and 12%. Whereas the majority of projects' expenses for public works will come in below the set budgets allotted, and those funds will be directed towards reserves funds for future use. Therefore, be it resolved that the 2025 capital financing strategy be amended to reflect a transfer of $840,000 to the unallocated capital reserve by a corresponding reduction in the funding for tax-supported public works proposed 2025 capital projects, and B, that staff report back in 2025 with information regarding the impacts of amending the contingencies for the projects referenced. So, can I speak to this?
Please.
So over the past week, staff with the support of Director Reaver identified $840,000 of potential savings in tax-supported public works projects from my suggested 2% decrease. And in light of our trade situations, this motion does not lower the levy, but it will put us in a position to make future database decisions that will. For some, this motion might go too far, for some, not enough. For me, no one will ever convince me that more efficiencies cannot be found in our system. And for me, no one will ever convince me that there are not ways to be more productive. But that's my opinion, and I realize without data, all you have is an opinion. So this motion helps foster system efficiencies and productivity in public works in a way that recognizes the challenges of the looming economic threat at our doorstep and on the horizon. But this motion also stretches goals for staff with a safety net. The motion asks for our public staffs to work with 2% less on top of many projects and puts that money in an unallocated reserve in case it is needed due to the economic uncertainty that we are facing. The motion asks for a report back to show if our staff can meet the new expectations. If staff can, then that's a path forward for other efficiencies to be sought elsewhere in the city and departments. If staff can't meet expectations, explanations will be provided in a transparent way for public consumption. As a council, I believe we need to address the public perception on city spending and budget. This motion addresses some of those concerns and allows one division, Public Works, to demonstrate their willingness to work towards efficient, productive practices in a way that does not jeopardize the start of ongoing work or completion of any current project or future project. It also allows us to collect ground level information and see if this is a viable path forward for future budgets. I spent probably a couple hours with GM Can and GM Zagara. The projects dealt with here are, again, tax-supported public works projects reflecting 2% savings to the amount of $840,000. Yesterday, after consultation, I agreed to put those potential savings of $840,000 to an unallocated capital reserve for access if needed in light of the looming Trump tariffs. But the goal is for Public Works to strive to not use those funds if possible. What am I seeking? I'm seeking a path to long-term sustainable, affordable budgeting. That's the ask. I hope my fellow councillors can support these aspirations that may lead to new ideas of how we look at our future budgets for the city. And also thanks to Director Weaver and his team for all the work they did in helping me craft this.
Thank you. Councillor Petey.
So point of order, Chair.
I'll recognize the point of order, please.
There's no impact on the budget, on the tax operating or capital budget. It is not in order and shouldn't be considered as part of the meeting.
Thank you. I got out of my habit of asking the clerk whether he deemed it to be in order, and you're pointing to GM Zagara. Thank you. I'll recognize GM Zagara.
Through the chair, the motion, if approved, amends the 2025 tax capital financing plan. So the motion recommends that the capital budget be amended such that the capital projects within Public Works projects be amended in their budgets to reflect $840,000 in funding reductions, and that those reductions be set aside to the unallocated capital reserve to allow for a year of observing whether in fact the city is able to deliver within the target, and if not, we would have, as Councillor Tedison identified, a safety net to offset those deficits. So again, it does amend the capital financing plan that's incorporated into the 2025 budget.
There's your answer, and that's why it's in order. Councillor Petey.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, I'm thankful to the mover for bringing this forward, happy to support it. While disappointingly this has no levy impact, what it does allow, and what I think the real innovation here is, it gives staff in the Public Works Department a safe environment to do some beta testing, as the term might be, to undertake this. I'm going to call it an experiment, but it's really more of an exercise, a theoretical exercise, where although, again, no levy impact, there is also accompanying no risk because the money is simply moved into a different allocation. And I know that at some point the speaking point will go forward about where the impact will be, and if I could share a little illustration. I'm kind of a simple guy. I like to illustrate things in simple ways. The current process, Chair, takes money out of the big pond, which is the taxpayer, and it places it into the project, which is comprised of two buckets, one large, one small. The large bucket pays for the actual project. The small bucket is the contingency. And the small bucket is used to refill the large bucket should it run out. If at the end of the project there is something left in the small bucket, it gets put into the big tank, which is some kind of reserve fund, but it does not get sent back into the big pond that is the taxpayer. It is not returned. The proposal here is to simply make the small bucket 2% smaller. So there's still going to be money in there to offset against cost overruns. There's still going to be money in there to help pay for the project itself. The big bucket will not go unfilled. It will not run out. What we're saying is we're going to take a little less out of the pocket of the taxpayer and hold it in abeyance just in case we need it. We're going to see if we can run an exercise where we can prove the model that we don't need quite as much of the taxpayer purse as initially anticipated. And I think there's good value in undertaking this, and I'm hopeful that council will see the value in proceeding with this proposal. And I'm thankful to the mover for allowing me to second it.
We have Councillor Cretch, followed by Councillor Danko, then Councillor Alex Wilson, then Councillor Kazar. Councillor Cretch, please.
Quick question for GM Can, then a couple of remarks from me. So GM Can, if I understand this motion correctly, what it says is there's 10 to 12% in contingency that is added to some projects in public works. Can we operate strictly kind of a 10% contingency? By employing an exercise, essentially, it's not going to change a single dollar of impact to taxpayers. However, what it's going to do is it's going to allow us to engage in an exercise to see if we do or don't need that money by putting this in a reserve to do that instead of just doing it as we normally do. Is that basically a good understanding of what it is? And then your comment would be helpful if you could say whether this is going to cause an issue for you in any way as GM of Public Works.
GM Can, please.
Yeah, through the chair to the councillor and other members of the committee. Carlisle Can, General Manager of Public Works, thank you for the question. I will invite Director Kennedy, who's on the line, to jump in and add to my response, and GM Zagarica, if he so chooses. At the end of the day, in our understanding of the discussion and the motion that's in front of you, it really is about managing risk, and different projects have different types of risk. And within the capital program, there are many different capital purchases. It could be the purchase of an asset, a HVAC unit, in simple terms, or it could be the design of a 10-kilometer stretch of road with underground infrastructure. So the first bucket, I would say, in terms of managing the risk, is known assets that are well defined, and typically we see the pricing from other municipalities, other tenders, previous bids that we've gotten air conditioning unit. So we will carry roughly 8 or 10% contingency based on the risk that we assess, and as we develop the program, the less risk there is, the smaller the contingency gets. When we look at designing larger projects where there's more risk, we're taking it to 20, 30, 40, 60%, the contingency reflects the amount of risk. So reducing the smaller bucket, as Councillor alluded to, definitely will stretch that. It's healthy. We will rise to the occasion or the challenges of Public Works, but then I think more importantly, we will report back. We may get in a scenario where the bids come in higher, and then typically what we do is we come back to Public Works Committee and say, here are the bids, and this is the, and to award this job, this is what we need, and then I think in that instance, we would then fund it or finance it from the 2% reserve that we're setting aside, or if we need more, then it will be the, I would seek support from finance, tax stabilization, or which capital reserve it can come from, depending on the project. So it's, I'm trying to answer your question. We will do what Cooney directs us to do. We will always challenge kind of the norms. When we design capital projects, really it is about how do we manage risk unforeseen. And if we can get everything down to a detailed spec, then you bid the job, you win the job, you deliver it for that price. When there are unknowns, then we have contingencies. Typically what would happen, there would be a request for change order, and then we would work and validate that. And if it's, you know what, this is a valid request, then we would draw from the contingency to pay that and add it to the project. If it's not, then we basically go with the contractor or the consultant to the price that they bid. Hopefully that helps. Happy to answer more questions, or like I said, Director Kennedy or Jim's here is online too.
Yeah, my questions, I think you covered in your answer, which were specifically whether or not this is something you could do. I think you understand it's an exercise that's happening here. It's not going to necessarily change the tax burden for people, but it's going to allow you to report back on the process, how the exercise went, and what happened. And if you're fine to entertain this exercise, I'm not going to stand in the way of it. In that spirit of it being an exercise and something you can manage, knowing that the money's there if you need it. Like the money will be there in that other account if you need it, regardless of these projects. What I will say though, just I'm going to be cheeky about this. You know, these motions that come forward for public works, which there's a series of kind of public works motions, I would say. No one around here is screaming that we're trying to defund public works. I just want to say that a lot of the motions I brought forward, specifically one motion I brought forward, I should say, regarding the police budget, any suggestion we cut a single sentence amalgamation is met with cries of defunding the police. Mind you, I can't tell you the number of motions we've had here for public works where that's never been screamed out loud. They're all different divisions and departments of the city, and I think it's important to put that on the record here, that we're perfectly fine to come in here and ask everybody else for efficiencies except for one department and division. I'll support this, and I will happily, let staff conduct the exercise and report back and see if it's been helpful. But I thought that was worth saying anyway. Thank you.
Councillor Danko?
Thank you, Budget Chair Wilson. I'm happy to support B, which is a report back on contingency reserves and how they're allocated and what amounts they should be. That's fine, but to be honest, I have no idea what we're trying to achieve with A. It makes zero sense whatsoever. When a project budget is put together with the project budget plus the contingency, what do you think happens to that money? Where do you think it goes? It is in the project account. So having a separate new reserve to put 2% of that money to, it's the same thing. What is the point of just arbitrarily saying we're going to take 2% and put it into a different allocated capital reserve? So just so I can be, I don't know how much clearer I can be about this, but when a project is closed out and there is money left over, or if there's not, if it's gone over budget or over the reserve, what happens to that money? We've already gone over this before. I don't know how many times we have to continue to go over it, but.
So is a question then on this? If you heard the question you answered there?
To the chair. Some committee members may recall WITS, and previously we had a WITS subcommittee. When capital projects are closed out, we have a policy called the capital closing policy. If there were to be a surplus and that project was funded from debt, we apply the surplus to reduce our future reliance on debt. If it's funded from reserve, the proceeds go back to the reserve that funded the project. If it was funded by contribution or levy, then it goes to the unallocated capital. The other application of surplus is we apply it to our capital financing plan, and I'll just remind committee, we reflected one of the amendments adjustments that was made was $6.9 million in WIP surplus as part of our 2025 capital financing strategy that reduced our position in January from 6.3 to 5.7.
Councillor, you still have time remaining if you'd like to use it.
Thank you. So again, we're creating a new capital reserve for no reason reason to duplicate a process that is already happening so that we can get a report back on information that we already have. Makes no sense. What does make sense is we're facing steel and aluminum tariffs, which will directly impact capital projects. And to Councilor Crutch's point, I have no interest in defunding our capital works or our public works department, because we have been defunding that department or underfunding for decades. And going into tariffs, going into uncertainty, as we saw with COVID, what do you think is going to happen with construction prices? When contractors have uncertainty, they build that into their bids, and their bids increase. That uncertainty will eat into the contingencies. Is 10 or 12% even enough? I don't know. But messing around with, we already have established policies and procedures to deal with this. Messing around with that at the last minute, when we know we are going into a period of significant uncertainty, it makes zero sense, in my personal opinion. Thank you.
Councillor Alex Wilson.
Thank you. After other speakers, I think I just have one question left. Councillor Danko just opined on this, but just seeking an answer from staff. Does the accounting practice change, just right now? Because that's what's happening, is it's just moving which accounts we're keeping this funding in. Does that enable the review to happen in easier and B from staff's perspective? Like, if our goal is B and it's that review, does A help us get to B? Could we do B in our current accounting practice? That's the bit I'm trying to change. Is there's a review which I support, and there's an accounting switch which I'm ambivalent to, frankly. And I'm just trying to understand if the accounting switch helps make the review any easier from staff's perspective or from a workflow perspective.
Councillor?
GM's, I'm looking at both the treasurer and the GM of Public Works, and I'll let them figure that out.
So I'll start in general managers here, can add on to my response. I think today we find ourselves doing a lot of things manually. In Public Works, since last year, we have been tracking projects by PMs, by engineers, kind of on the side in Excel, or let's call it back at the napkin, because our financial systems aren't in place yet. So when you talk about the accounting practices, what we do is we look at what is awarded, and that's typically the low bid, and we go through procurement. And based on that award amount, they then define the contingency, which is typically 10%, and we are capped at that. So even if there's monies available in the bigger account envelope, purchasing will say to us that, hey, this is what the bid came in, here's 10%, and that's it. Those other funds are not accessible to staff in a day-to-day execution of their duties. Should change orders come in once they hit that limit, the director, the managers, myself, we look at them, and then we basically review them on a monthly, bi-monthly basis, and then definitely within the quarter we'll bring that forward in the BER reports, exception reporting. The accounting practice is it's not there nor there. I think it's really a paper exercise. I think Director Kennedy and myself, we've been talking about this in light of the new enterprise asset management system coming on board, in light of the new financial systems. And these are just good common practices that we do and we embrace. And I think what was alluded to or discussed earlier was that we're already doing it. So it shines a light, and I understand the intent of the motion. It puts a focus on that healthy tension. So either way, if whatever council directs us to do as staff, we are more than happy to do that. I can assure you that we're doing that anyhow. So it's no, it focuses on it and it puts somewhat more of a burden, but you know what, it's not a bad thing, and it's really 50-50. So hopefully that makes sense. And Mr. Zagaric, I don't know if you want to add to that or not.
To the chair, I'll just simply add, I'm interpreting A provides a bit of attention for the program areas to deliver the projects within the assigned budgets, recognizing A reduces the budgets for these specific projects by approximately 2%. what we will learn is whether that one activity created a financial impediment with respect to awarding the project. Recognizing there's many factors out there, and those factors are increasing and being amplified because of things that are happening internationally, but I'm interpreting A provides that, sort of that tension for the program areas to try to deliver within the revised budget, and then B allows staff to report back as it relates to our earnings of 2025.
Through you, Chair, what I heard was that it's not a substantial difference in terms of the accounting practice, staff or the exercise. I guess I just have a bit of tension there, just trying to understand the 2% target versus a more general report back saying, hey, things that you steal came in over this year, we understand why, versus, or these types of projects needed a 11% contingency versus these types of projects. So definitely in favor of a review. I don't want to be kind of a stick in the mud or focusing on language. I'll listen to where everyone else is at here. Just say much more supportive of I think the review coming back. Still not exactly sure where I'm at with A specifically, but not hearing any deep concerns so far.
Councillor Casada.
Thanks, Chair Wilson. Very helpful discussion. First, I'll start by saying I applaud Councillor Tattison for really digging into this. I know it's been a passion of his, and I know what he's trying to get to. He's trying to get to a point where, using the contingency portion of a project, that we can actually levy 2% less, because we tend to have surpluses, and let's not charge them in the first place. Even though it's going to Reserve A, Reserve B, whatever, it's already taken from the levy, right? So I'm thinking not from the council. So I don't know, so B, yes, I agree with B, we need to do that. To me, I see A as a sort of way to get there. But I think really what the resolution is for staff to come back with, in the future years, this is kind of a year project or cost maybe, to come back with a way to reduce contingency needs by 2%. And that's sort of spelled out, I think, in the whereas maybe, but it doesn't specifically say it here. So I think that's what needs to be said. You sort of have it in numbers, but it's not very clear to look back or for someone reading this what you're trying to get at. And I support what you're trying to get at through the chair. But somehow I think it will be better if the resolution will be direct staff to study ways to reduce the contingency by 2%, and part of the action is B, the output is B. So I'm offering that as a way forward here to be a little more direct, and maybe then give staff some more flexibility, and maybe it reduces the complexity of the number of reserves involved. I don't have the benefit of all the discussions with staff, but I'll put that out there for the mover to consider.
I consider that, but I worked with GM Kane and Jim Zagarek to craft this yesterday, although it was rushed because we all had lots of different meetings, so I'm open to that. Being more specific, that is the goal, to look at the contingencies in the big picture, and can we not take that from the public initially, which is what you just said. So I think that's clear to General Manager Can, I think it's clear to General Manager Zagarek, it's clear to me. I don't know how to more clearly word it that you're asking, but I'm open to it.
Councillor Mann.
At this point, really appreciating the questions and dialogue around the council chamber. Most of my questions have been answered, but just so that I have it in summary, if the project goes currently over cost, we draw additional funds from our existing contingencies. Should those contingencies be insufficient, then we draw on reserves. Those reserves, if they don't have delegated authority, come to committee or council, ultimately council for approval. Got that correct? That's again one. Two, if a project is completed without using all the allocated funds to the project, including contingencies, those surpluses then go back into, that's where my ... ends. General Manager
Chair. If there's a surplus, then the surplus funds, if the project was debt funded, it goes to reduce future debt. If it was reserve funded, it goes back to the reserve, the specific reserve that funded the project. If it was levy funded, it goes to our unallocated capital reserve, or can be used to reduce the capital financing for the budget year as we did. Just with respect to A, while I was nodding my head, just a point of clarification, staff do not have authority over reserves, only council has authority over reserves. So if you think to post-pandemic, when we had pressures with Macassa Lodge and our paramedic reporting center, in terms of construction costs, staff had to report to council and seek council's approval to increase the funding for those projects.
Thank you for clarifying. In favor of B, I think just in general, I think it's an important piece of work for council to continue good governance going forward as it relates to capital decision-making and budget decision-making. So in support of that, and appreciate Councillor Casar's comment.
Councillor Clark.
Just a couple of questions, Chair, if I may. So if I can provide some context, I have signed more than a few contracts in my time in the ministry for new highways, new bridges, et cetera, et cetera. From time to time, we have contractors come in saying they needed an addendum to the contract because when they did their work, they, for example, their geotechnical study was off and they found that the bedrock was 2 feet under the soil, not 8 feet under the soil. And there'd be an argument to change the contract to pay for the additional cost. Is that what's happening here? You've got tenders that have gone out, they come in, we accept the lowest bid, and then sometime the contractor comes in and says, notwithstanding that I tendered at this amount, I have found this challenge and I need extra money. So is that the type of thing that you fund through these contingencies?
So through the chair, Director Kenny probably has a more direct line of sight of some of the projects and challenges we have. But typically, the request for change order has to be warranted. So if the contractor bids a job, and in your example, we're talking geotechnical, and the geotechnical study was wrong, then we would work with the contractor and entertain the change order. Having said that, we would then go back to the consultant who did the geotechnical study and say, hey, you got it wrong. And they also have insurance and professional liability, which we can draw from. So I think there's a chain of reactions that would happen in that example. But really the contingency is, as you know, it's to manage risk, unforeseen things that we weren't able to capture in our detailed design that we found out while we were opening up a road, a wall, the escarpment. And these are all things that we weren't able to define in our contract, so therefore they weren't able to give us a definitive bid. And it's really about managing that risk. If we have a multi-year job and they bid it and they didn't put in the right escalation factor, that's on them. They have to eat that because that's what the bid was. We do have performance bonds that we can drop on. We do have LDs, liquidated damages that we can drop on. And that is how we hold up to the fire. So I see Director Kennedy has popped on, so maybe she wants to add a little bit more context to my response.
I would appreciate that, Chair.
Good afternoon, Director Kennedy. I'm not sure when you joined, but if, do you understand the question that is being asked and the scope of it?
I do. Thank you very much, Chair. Jackie Kennedy, Director of Engineering Services. Councillor Clark, your example is an excellent one where we do the area of excavation that are not as expected, and the contingency is used for that, among other things as well, where we may find we need to adapt to current or changing guidelines or standards that may have come in place since the time of tender or the time of the design. There are a whole number of things that do come up as we go through the life of delivering these complex projects in an older city with lots of things that aren't obvious until you are right there on top of them. And so the contingencies allow us to respond to that. So that's exactly what they're used for. I hope that answers the question.
It does, Chair, if I may ask a supplemental. So the contingency is really for errors that the city may have made in their pre-design work, whatever the case is. Costs go up we did not anticipate. It's not to offset addendums to a contract or a change order for a contract. That would be dealt with separately. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes, that would be dealt with in a different way. So a contractor will come to the project manager with any idea of where they expect they might be able to earn some extra money. Then the job of the project manager is really to know the contract and work within it, to hold the contractor accountable to deliver the work as bid, consistent with that contract. And when the city tenders a project, in my 25 years of capital delivery, I don't think I've ever seen a project without a change order. And if I did, I would probably ask who did that and how long it took, because the reality is that that you can't get it perfect without probably spending more time than you should have. So there is a balance to be sought there, and having a contingency to deliver a project is a healthy tool. It's very standard and typical. And as GM Khan spoke to earlier, the amount that we use does range depending on the type of work that we're doing, our understanding of how far we can take the designs and the specifications to know all of the things we can expect. Sometimes the contingency may be lower, and sometimes we may feel we need to have a higher amount because the unknowns could be greater. So the 10 or 12% is a general rule of thumb, and they can be higher or lower than that depending on the work before us as well.
So to be clear, it kind of sounds like to me, Chair, that regardless of what the project is, there's always an anticipation that there will be a need for contingencies because they really don't know what they're getting into. It's not an exact science. You can run into things that you did not expect. Is that correct?
Through the chair, thank you. That is very well said, Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Pauls.
Thank you. And before I vote on this motion, to me, I want to ask, would this action by council, when we vote, or for lack of a better term, end up micromanaging the staff and their projects in any way?
So,
I just want to be careful about the language so that we're not drawing staff into a zone of discomfort. So maybe, I'm wondering whether the question could be, what would staff be doing under this that they're not doing now? Might that be an appropriate question?
Yeah, basically, the contingency is unforeseen event, right? So, and then if we overbid or, we have money left over, I heard that it goes to a research project or reduce the capital finance. So to me, when I'm listening to, I want to make sure I vote properly, that it is redundant in a way because we already put it in research projects or we put it to reduce the capital finance. So when Councillor Danko was speaking, there's some misunderstanding here, what the actual motion is asking. And if the contingency is for unforeseen event, we can't really put an amount to it, like 2% or 1% or whatever. That's my question. It doesn't tie the hands of the project manager to do the project.
I'll go to Jan Can.
so through the chair to the councillor, and at the risk of further complicating the discussion, I'm going to maybe speak to how we develop our capital programs. At the end of the day, I think council and committee members know that we get basically block funding. And within that block, we identify projects that need to go forward. And we use our asset management framework when we prioritize these projects. So as we define those projects, if we can tighten up the contingency, what that really means to us as staff is we get to do one more project. When we run out of money, or we run out of people or resources, then that's the line. So being conscious of tightening up our contingency or tightening up the projects allows us to really address the $3.4 billion of work that we have on the books that need to come in the next 10 to 30 years. And that is what our asset management plans are saying. So the exercise itself will shed a light on it. We are going to report back. We're going to do that regardless of this. I think it's good to know, and Director Kenny and I are committed to that. And so are our staff. We are committed to delivering value for the work that we do. So, yeah, that's my response, and if I need to expand or maybe clarify, please, through the chair.
It's clear, and I thank you for that, so I can now clearly vote the way I think I should vote. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no further speakers. I thought that Councillor Caddison was trying to get my attention earlier, but I may be in error here.
Just leaning in, Councillor Gassar has proposed I guess, a friendly, and I've asked the clerk if he could show it that might help connect the dots for those who cannot see what we're trying to attempt here, and thanks to Councillor Gassar for
I'll
helping me
recognize,
line it.
I'll recognize the member of the friendly, and then we'll seek your assurance that you deem it to be a friendly. How's that?
Fair enough.
Yeah, so further to the few moments ago when I spoke, just trying to bring some clarity to what's actually being, what the desired outcome is here without putting handcuffs on staff on how to go about doing that. So it's just suggesting here the councillor's goal is to, on an ongoing basis in the future, to have staff reduce the contingency by up to 2% in order to actually put less on the levy for capital projects and not have to come under, put that money to a reserve when the money's already been taken from the levy. And yes, then we can use it somewhere else, but then it becomes one-time funding and then has consequences to future tax budgets. So this way, we're reducing the levy, is what I think the council wants to do, and we don't have the complication of reserves. So that's the language that's up there on the screen. Hopefully it gets to what the desired outcome is.
Okay, Councillor, to the mover.
I agree, it's in line with the desire to seek efficiencies. Thank you.
Councillor Danko.
So on the amendment, if this is what's on the table now, I'm fine, as I said, with report back on reviewing contingencies, but this is predetermining an action that we're going to reduce contingencies by 2% in order to reduce the levy. I do not agree with that direction in any way. If we want to have a report back on the potential or a review of contingencies that's open-ended, not predisposing an outcome, I'm fine with that. But as I said, I am not interested in putting our capital projects at risk in any way.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cassar, please.
Thanks, Councillor Danko. Would it be helpful to change the wording to the PW staff undertake work to determine the potential to reduce contingency instead of how to? It's less directive and more open-ended. Is that good? Yep. Seeing a thumbs up from Councillor Danko.
To the mover. Did you hear that exchange and the conditionality?
I understand Councillor Danko's desire here, and when I did look at the 2%, I thought, well, what if it's, for contingency where a project has 35% contingency, it's not enough. So I can look at that because my desire is to determine the actual potential, as my original desire was to put some tension into the system. I think if we get that information back with the word potential, I'm fine with that, okay? So thank you.
And your seconders? Yeah. Okay. So the mover and the seconder are agreeing to the language. Is there any further comment or question on that which is before you on the screen? Knowing I can't see Councillor Paul's, but I'm sure clerks will alert me.
I just want to read it in my head one more time, thanks.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. It is nice to see Councillor Paul's, but if you could put the motion back, please.
Again, seeing what I was intending, like, there might be situations where we can go higher than 2. So is there, does anyone have any suggestions to kind of take the 2% out, even though the 2 is the minimum? Or the maximum at this point? That staff undertake work to determine the potential to reduce the contingency portion of PW capital projects.
If I may, I think...
With the outcome, with the desired outcome, so just take out the up by 2, with the desired outcome of reducing the levy impact? Okay, does that work? Okay, I'm comfortable with that. Are you comfortable with that? Second.
I'm going to recognize, the mover is comfortable. I'll recognize the seconder, please.
I just wanted to look to the bench to get some assurances from the general manager, who was formative, I understand, in the original composition of the motion. Now that the wording has changed substantively, I want to make sure that the general manager's, plural, well, I only see one, the general manager is understanding of the intent. The intent, I think, remains the same. The wording has changed. Carlisle will be good. Thumbs up.
Through the chair, thumbs up.
Thank you, Chair.
Point of order. Point of order is recognized. Councillor Nan, please.
Appreciate all the friendly around the table. Does this remain a budget motion?
And I'm unfriendly.
You know, there is an opportunity later in the motion, on the agenda, Councillor. It's not that it can't be action today. I think it's a fair question. And I'll look to first to Clerk Trenum to give us some advice. We want to make sure, again, since Friday, although I wasn't very popular, we have to be consistent in ensuring that it is a budget motion in order for it to be in order. We sought clarification before, assurance was given, yes. I'm looking to maybe Acting Director Kirk Weaver.
Through the Chair, Kirk Weaver, Acting Director of Financial Planning, Administration and Policy. In looking at the revised wording, we wouldn't be revising the capital financing plan by the $840,000 to those specific projects with the way this motion is worded.
Okay, so it would not be in order. I'm just going to seek assurance from the clerk. Come on, folks.
This is funny.
That's what happens when we're running.
Come on, folks. Let's just
I'll just
wait our turn.
advise the chair that in your opinion as chair, if you feel we are better served to deal with it now, given the amount of debate, I'm not going to argue that. If you would like to renumber it merely as item 9.8, we can apply that number and that's where it will exist within the minutes as a separate item, but I leave it to your decision now.
I'm going to look to Jim Ken.
So through the chair, just add on to Acting Director Kirk Weaver. If the 840 was not in the resolution, we would be looking at a broader bunch of projects. We would be looking at all projects, different types of projects, and we will come back with that report.
Okay. Your point of order has been responded to. Okay. Councillor, it is my opinion, although I'm really fastidious about fairness, that because we have talked about this so much, we can entertain it now at this point in the budget. And I don't see any disagreement or disgruntlement with that opinion. So you have, would you like to speak to it as it's been raised?
I think I've spoken enough, and let's vote.
Okay. Question has been called.
Sorry, point of order, just briefly, it's going to be renumbered as 9.8 under motions, right? You didn't say that out loud, but I wanted to make sure that it was going to be at the deputy clerk's suggestion.
So Chair, correct, we'll number it as a motion, but you can hold the vote now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that point of clarification. We'll hold the vote now, knowing that. Also, you're able to vote? Carries 15-0. We're on to 7.11D, which is a motion. Councillor Crouch, please introduce your motion and identify your seconder, please.
This will be the fastest motion today, I promise.
All right.
Seconder is Councillor McMeekin. This is literally in writing, just what GM Zagaric had said last week, that we have to deal with the unallocated $1.5 million in the library. And we're putting that in writing to do that job by working with the library to develop a financing plan for this work that does not impact the levy. Literally, he said it, asked us for it in writing, so I did. So we're here. Thank you.
Thank you. No one's on the speakers list. Everybody understands and recalls that. Oh, gee, Councillor Danko.
Just to be consistent, if there's no impact on the 2025 budget, is it in order?
So I'm hearing some comments that this would in fact represent an amendment because in the absence of this, there would be an impact. So therefore, it is an impact by being not an impact.
Let's go with that. That's good.
I'm looking to Clerk Trenum for his professional advice and he's not. So I'm going to say it is in order because of the chronology in which I've just very high-end articulated. Please execute the e-vote. Thank you, that carries 16-0. We're on to 7.11E. Councillor Francis, this is your motion, and if you could introduce it along with identifying your seconder, please, and thank you.
Thanks, Budget Chair Wilson. It's moved by myself, second by Councillor Mike Spatafora. Removal of 2025 capital funding for expedited bike lanes. Whereas residential taxpayers are looking at a potential 5.7% increase in property taxes. Whereas Council has declared an affordability crisis. Whereas the threat of looming U.S. tariffs will create an economic recession in Canada, will have $1 billion impact on Hamilton's local economy that could impact thousands of jobs. Whereas fiscal responsibility is a priority for the municipality and every expenditure should be evaluated for its impact on taxpayers. Whereas the proposed 2025 tax budget includes standalone cycling projects budgeted at $3 million. Whereas the proposed 2025 tax budget includes a proposed budget amount of $1 million to support continued acceleration of the cycling master plan development. Therefore, be it resolved that the proposed 2025 tax support budget be amended as follows. A, that the bicycle infrastructure upgrades capital project 403-2311222 gross 250,000 net 250,000 be removed. B, that the bicycle boulevard neighborhoods greenways program capital budget 403-2317053 gross 120,000 net 120,000 be removed. And C, that the two-way conversion Feasibility study is capital project 403-255-322, gross 320,000, net 320,000 be removed. D, that the on-street bike facilities capital project 466-2317-124, gross 600,000, net 600,000 be removed. And E, finally, that the accelerated active transportation plan implementation capital project 403-255-501, gross $1 million, net $1 million be removed. And just to speak to this briefly before.
I apologize for ending you. I'm going to recognize the clerk who's trying to get my attention. This motion does not match the motion that I have.
And I just want to advise that there were two, D and E, I believe, were inadvertently left off because they were on a second page in the publishing. We've made them available here. This was reviewed through staff, and this was what was recommended through staff based on the back and forth. Unfortunately, it's not up online. As soon as we pull the e-scribe down, we'll be able to publish it so that the full amount can actually be there. But I've posted it here so that we can see clauses D and E. And I will just advise that we do have the Director of Transportation Planning available to answer questions as required.
Thank you. I apologize for interrupting you, but it's good to get that on.
I appreciate it, and I want to thank Director Hollingworth as well and GM Garrett for their help in nailing this down a little bit further. It wasn't really in order at the budget meeting, now it is. And I just want to speak to this very briefly. We can't stick our heads in the sand by doing the same things in the face of new economic unprecedented threats. I didn't support the approved expedited bike lanes originally, but now with Trump's tariffs coming in the middle of an affordability crisis, this council must act differently. And I hope I can get unanimous support given the dire circumstances that we've been placed in. Thank you.
I have, just so folks know, Councillor Mann, followed by Councillor Jackson, then Councillor Cassar. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, and truly deeply appreciating the affordability crisis as we understand it today, and that which is looming and constantly being threatened by the building next door. That said, on Monday I had the privilege of cutting the ribbon as president of City Housing Hamilton and chair of the board on 55 units downtown on a former municipal parking lot that was underutilized. And for the first time ever, City Housing Hamilton has enabled a building that gives its tenants robust and diverse options for active transportation. It includes bike share access. It includes membership to communal auto. And it of course includes ongoing pedestrian access to a robust HSR system and routes so that residents can move around our city freely in terms of unencumbered, but also accessibly. That addresses the affordability crisis of those who are most impacted in our community right now. I can't think of a better example of why I should vote against this motion. Also embedded in this motion, under D, is the feasibility study for two-way conversion. Just an outstanding action item for the Lower City for quite some time. In fact, Budget Chair, you mentioned it quite eloquently in previous statements to a different motion. But there is a necessity for us to deal with reality. And I appreciate that the councillor is trying really hard to predict what's coming and therefore the need to reduce the net levy impact. But we unfortunately have a legacy of issues that we're contending with as a governing body. And we have to practice due diligence in our governance. And I will not compromise the things that Ward 3 residents and Lower City residents have been asking for decades. The solutions that are on this motion for cut, for reduction, actually impact people's lives. They directly result in affordability, and they also help right-size our municipal network of transportation so that the appropriate number of vehicles and roadways are dedicated to vehicles, bikes, pedestrians. That's the way people move around here. And I'm happy to continue supporting that through our tax levy impact. Thank you. I'll be voting against.
Councillor Jackson.
Thanks, Budget Chair Wilson. I'll be supporting Councillor Francis's motion. Rewinding the tape back to the first 2 or 3 months of the infancy of this new era change council in the budget deliberations of 2023, I'll never forget the lightning quick speed that a former master cycling plan over 30 years, but I felt was from past councils prudent, appropriate, responsible, fiscally keeping in mind, and as roads were being reconstructed, redone, one by one, we could look at inserting cycling lanes. I'll never forget the lightning quick speed by the new era on council and wanting to be bold to take that 30-year plan and condense it into 3 to 5 years at a $60 million cost. I voted, I think I was only 1 or 2 or 3 members of council then to vote against it. All I heard from my constituents was how irresponsible that decision was and how money should have been spent for traditional infrastructure upgrades to the community on the East Mountain and across the city. And so Councillor Francis, I think, is very prudently saying, hey, here's some opportunities here where we can help the current 5.6% increase that my constituents are still unhappy about. And I will be supporting it to be consistent with my position of 2 years ago. Thank you, Budget Chair Wilson.
Councillor Casar.
Thank you, Chair Wilson. Listening to residents and cutting costs are part of our job. They're not the only part of our job. As I've said a few times today, city building is a huge part of our job. So we need to come to the mind with a city building mindset. We need to learn what good city building is, in my opinion. I put a lot of effort into that. And tariffs or any other economic troubles don't relieve us of the responsibility of city building. We need, irrespective of our own likes or dislikes or uses of a certain facility or transportation mode within the city, we need to be making decisions that are good for the city, like a product manager. And when you do that, you look at the features of what's on offer and what we're trying to build, not our own personal preferences. Across North America and around the world, cycling infrastructure, active transportation infrastructure has proven to be very, very effective in city building in many different ways. But let's just take cycling out of it for a second. So if we have, which cycling provides, a way to make transportation more efficient, to get cars off the road and to leave space on the road for cars and people who need to get there, people with disabilities or who don't have the means or the ability to ride, that's a positive. That's been proven. To make our streets safer, all of us here, I think, have put in motions to put traffic calming in. It's been proven over and over again that adding cycling infrastructure, narrowing streets makes them safer for everybody. People driving, people walking, and people cycling. There's a physical buffer that does that. Proven over and over again. It creates an environment that supports small businesses. I've mentioned before in a meeting here, late last year, how on Bloor Street, where the provincial government wants to tear up bike lanes, businesses along Bloor are saying, no, don't do that. We've seen our business up significantly because people who come on foot and on bike stop more often and spend more money than people just driving through. We can look out our window here, there's cars just driving through along this stretch here. There's no reason to stop. And it's not a good place for business, as Councillor Wilson, our chair, was talking about earlier. And I'm aware of a high-tech business that is looking to move to Hamilton, and they're doing that because of our decision that Councillor Jackson mentioned to accelerate active transportation. Highly skilled workers moving to Hamilton. That's what we want. We want more business. It attracts businesses. You don't have to search very far on Google to find examples. I would encourage you to do that, because just to say we need to save a couple $1 million, it's totally ignoring the benefit of the investment. Not to mention cleaner air. And of course, there's public health. It is proven in study after study, when people cycle as part of their daily activity, they arrive healthier, more energized, and they're more productive. These are all things that we want. So to just write this off as we're gonna cut some money because we need to cut some money, you're not looking at the big picture. And of course, the last, most importantly, as referenced in the motion, affordability. If a family can move to Hamilton with good infrastructure for micro-mobility and get rid of one of their 2 cars and save up to $10,000 a year, whatever the number is, it'll be different for everybody, that helps affordability. I am myself in that example. I don't have a car to use on a daily basis because I ride. But I'm not making this decision because of my personal preference and because I want more cycling infrastructure for all the aforementioned reasons that are good for the city. So please, we need to consider the bigger picture and not just a narrow view of how much money we can save in the moment without considering costs for the future. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Critch.
I think Councillor Cassar hit all the points, frankly. So I'll be brief and just focus on the one that I hear about a lot from residents who live downtown. 2 things I hear the most. I don't mean downtown just in Moore, I mean across the lower city. First thing I hear a lot of envy from mountain residents and others who continue to say they wish they had the same type of cycling network plans and type of cycling infrastructure we see in some places here. So I think it's important we think about the citywide. Number 1 thing I hear is people don't necessarily feel safe with the current network and its connectability across our city. People in Ward 2 want to get to Ward 3, 4 border, so they can go to Ottawa Street. It's not easy to do that right now. People want to get to other places in our city to shop, to do all kinds of things, experience things, to go to parks, and it's not safe to do so right now because we have a fragmented network. Accelerating this plan means connecting things and protecting things. People are only going to use cycling infrastructure if it feels safe to do so.
ago.
Yes.
But it
wasn't uploaded.
I think it wasn't uploaded for, it was uploaded then, but it wasn't uploaded for this one.
They assumed you'd go
because
back.
We got some fantastic camera shots.
I called it, I told you. We just received the security in Jackson's garage. But I
I was hoping to just want security, like more security, but they were like, okay, that's fine. Show Bobby. Oh, yeah, Bobby, yeah. The background.
Good afternoon. If you're tuning in, we're still deliberating the operating capital budget for the year 2025, and it still is the year 2025. We had a brief recess in order to just gain some documentation to assist us in the full deliberation of our decisions. We are on to 711F, which is a reconsideration motion of a decision that was approved, and I'm going to look to Clerk Trenum to walk us through the genesis and what actually is being reconsidered and what date. Excuse me, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So, Councillor Jackson would like to bring forward a motion to amend the proposed 2025 budget to remove the 16 FTEs associated with the Hamilton Apartment Rental Program. In order to do that, you need to, as a council, decide whether or not you would like to reconsider previous decisions made on the Hamilton Apartment Rental Program. A phase-in and implementation approach was decided through an information report that is included in part of the GIC budget budget report 24001, which is together the January and February 2024 tax-supported budget and financing plan, all of which is included in that. It's complicated in the report itself, but what you see on the screen is what is being reconsidered. And essentially this, by choosing to reconsider this, you open up the decision made on the program itself. The details of which are much further down in the report, found in the information section, page 52, it begins at section 4, detailing how the phase-in was to occur. That phase-in in the information section informs how council made its decision on the financing piece further up, located in the section that you see on the screen. So what council is doing in order for Councillor Jackson to bring forward his motion would be to reconsider this decision on the program. That allows you to move amendments to the original decision on the program, which includes the implementation, timeline, and phase-in of the FTEs and budgeting therein.
Thank you. And I was remiss, I just wanted to state for Councillor Jackson, there was nothing untoward in his efforts of submitting this motion. Okay? But what we do have right now is a reconsideration motion for this body. And I'd like to go to the vote on that reconsideration, but I do see Councillor Spatafora's hand up. Do you have a question of clarification? Do you have an interest to declare? You so do?
Sorry, Chair, it's not an interest. I wanted to explain why I do not have an interest. I did speak with the IC, and in regards to this bylaw, I am a landlord of a single unit, but this bylaw, the safe apartment bylaw, talks to 6 units or more or 2 stories or more, which that information was also provided to me by the acting director of bylaw, Dan Smith. So I just wanted to know that is the reason why I'm not declaring a bylaw, a conflict, because the bylaw speaks to 6 units or more or 2 story. That is my understanding, and my rental is 1 unit. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the Councillor Benko, do you have a question on what's before us?
Just before we vote, I believe the mayor still does have a conflict that she's indicated. So if that's 15 votes, what is 2/3? Is it 10?
Yes. Sorry, the reconsideration motion is before this body. Oh, I beg your pardon. I think because we've discussed it, not do apologize. Councillor Jackson, would you like to put your reconsideration motion forward and identify your secondary? I beg your pardon.
Not at all. And Budget Chair Wilson, thanks for the fairness of your comment too, because before my colleagues went to bed last night, I did alert them. Jewel was occurring today, and Clerks was just jammed this morning before they could get this in front of everyone. So for whatever it's worth, I apologize from my end. Moved by myself, seconded by Ward 7 Councillor Esther Balls. What you saw up on the screen, I'm going to read it for public consumption because people listening in don't have the ability to see the screen. Reconsideration of a decision that was approved February 15, 2025 special council meeting, respecting item 4, Roman numeral 2 of the GIC budget report 24-001, January and February 2024 tax support budget and financing plan, the plan number listed citywide. That item 4, Roman numeral 2 of the GIC budget 24-001 in January and February 2024 tax supported budget financing plan with the plan number listed citywide, item 7.1, February 15, 2024, which was approved by council on February 15, 24, read as follows, being reconsidered. The 2024 tax supported budget and financing plan number listed there, Roman numeral 2, rental property budget items. And there was originally there a further comment, City Clerk Trenum, about the $1 million. Can I read that as well, please? But it's not up on the screen.
Yeah, so, through you, Chair, you can certainly read it, but what I'm advising is item II, the rental property budget items, is more inclusive of everything that is considered or as part of the reconsideration. So it's reasonable to stop at that. However, your piece is part of that. You're welcome to read it, but the motion that is being reconsidered is what's on the screen.
Okay, I'll stop there, even though I had the additional amount of information. Budget Chair Wilson, can I just be allowed to explain? And please, stares and glares just diminish for 5 minutes.
I am going to look to the clerk, please, on what is in order before you can speak to anything. I think you need the permission of the council.
And what I'll just advise is what can be discussed is whether or not, debated to reconsider this particular item. So that is what is on the floor. Do we, as a council, want to reconsider this? So a discussion and comments along those lines would be in order.
Am I through you, Budget Chair? Okay.
Do you have a point of order, Councilor McMeekin?
Yeah, I'm curious. I mean, I don't have any problem debating this, but to move reconsideration, do you have to have voted in favor of the mover and the seconder voted in favor of this initial?
Yes, at the time you have voted in the affirmative in order to move a reconsideration. So, Councillor, I agree with Clerk Trennan. Your remarks have to be on the rationale for the reconsideration.
Thank you. And can I explain in that rationale what this is and what this isn't? So that if it's to lose, I just want to explain quickly what this is and what this isn't. Because I met with representatives of Acorn recently in the community. Quickly, this has nothing to do with the renovations bylaw and the 10 recently hired stays. I support it. This has nothing to do with repealing the safe inspections rental program bylaw. I support it. This is simply about, with the 10 new hired, do we want to proceed with 16 at this time? That's all. Thank you for allowing me that, Budget Chair Wilson. Seconded by Ward 7 Councillor Esther Balls. Thank you.
What is before you now is a reconsideration motion. In order for the item to be deliberated further, it has to receive the support of 2/3 of this body. 2/3 equals 10 members. 10 members would have to grant the mover the permission to reconsider in further debate. Reconsideration is defeated, 8-7 with one Just beg your indulgence for a minute while I find my way on the roadmap. I believe we are on 711G. Okay, thank you. 711G is Climate Change Reserve Budget. I believe the author of this is Councillor Pauls. If so, present your motion.
Thank you, and mine is very short, and I'll just, after I read it, I'll just do a couple of comments, and then we'll move on. So my is, whereas Council is trying to find savings to try to reduce the 2025 5.7 budget. Whereas we did not spend the 2.5 million in 2025 for climate change action strategy, and whereas we can utilize the 2.5 million to reduce the levy impact in 2025. Therefore, let it be resolved that we remove the 2.5 million transfer to the climate change reserve and utilize the 2.5 million to reduce the levy impact in 2025. And can I speak to that?
Certainly.
Thank you. Okay. If we don't find ways to reduce this budget, I believe will create and increase more homelessness. Also will increase more stress and financial burden to our residents, not just on Ward 7, everywhere. I looked at the 13 climate change projects, and there is not one, this is the paper that I printed out, there is not one that I can truly say it is an emergency, and that if we do not implement it, it would be catastrophic. So, before we had the climate change office, we as council implemented initiatives, and we looked at every department through the lens of climate change. We declared climate change in 2019, the first time, and we looked through the lens of climate change. So, what are we implementing today that we did not already implement in last term? So, I want to read in the record what these 13 projects for climate change are. And I'm not going to read them all, just a few of them that I just find it kind of strange in a sense. We have to low impact development, green standard training for our planning department and economic development. Why do we have to train them? We've been doing this since last term. And then we have If Trees Could Talk, public education initiative. Why do we have to do an education piece if trees can talk? Then there were another, making nonprofit housing climate resilient. First of all, which housing project? $250,000. We already have in our planning that they have to be climate resistant. Every building we do looks through the climate lens. They are 2.5 million, and I could read them all, that really, we're already doing. But the one that really stood out the most is this, the feasibility study. Air conditioning Hamilton rental unit, it was 150,000. Then it was fleet serve electrical vehicle, grid feasibility, 150,000. And last, organic management, phase 2 feasibility study, $250,000. My question is, we do have a climate office. Why can't they do the study? So as I looked at all 13 of them, and I don't want to read all 13, you should go and look it up, what the proposed December 4, 2024 project action were. And all of them, I don't see an emergency. We can postpone this to the next year or the following year, and we will be just fine. But in our taxes. I want to tell you, I went to visit somebody and somebody ran from another house saying, I cannot afford my taxes. What do I do? And I told them we had if you can, to give me a call and we'll see what we can do about it. Maybe he could postpone it and do it later, whatever. I want to tell you, people every day, whether it's my resident or the residents of downtown or anywhere, are saying the same thing. You cannot afford a 5.7 increase. Last year, we had a 5.7, the year before was 6 something. It's over, cumulatively, 15% over. How can we afford it? So for this reason, I say, let's put this $2.5 million climate action that really is not needed today, but maybe in the future, when we're already stable and have the finance. And I'm going to tell you something, we're doing this already. I remember in last term, how we looked everything through the climate change eyes. So I'm just wondering, we have an office now, and now we give $2.5 million for them to tell us the same thing what we're doing. So thank you, and I hope you can support this.
Councillor Casar.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question to start of the mover. Councillor Pauls was part of the council in 2019 that declared a climate emergency. I'd like to ask her what her understanding is of that emergency and what that declaration means and her take on the climate crisis in 2025, please.
Councillor Pauls.
What is my take? My take is that it was 7 years ago. The planning department, the public works department, the health department, we all looked to the climate change. They came and presented us. Our building codes were all climate change resistant. We are doing the work now. So my view is that these 13 things that I don't know if everybody looked at can wait, but the people cannot afford their taxes. And if you think this is an emergency to have a feasibility on whether we need air conditioning, and I think they should be able to do that. That's their work.
Thank you, Councillor. The question was asked and answered. Councillor Casar has the floor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The mover referenced 13 projects, which to my understanding were from the 2024 allocation and have nothing to do with 2025. The whereas it's very sparse in terms of whereas for this motion. It says, whereas we did not spend the $2.5 million in 2025, we're on February 12, 2025, have not approved the budget for 2025. So we have not spent the $2.5 million from the climate change action strategy. So we're a little bit out of order because we can't spend it until we have it. So just if I could ask staff to clarify if I'm correct, that the projects being referenced by the mover in the last few minutes were from 2024.
I see Director Lukasik up in the cheap seats.
Thank you very much. Linda Lukasik, Director of the Office of Climate Change Initiatives. Through the Chair, that's correct, Councillor Casar. Those 13 projects were approved as part of the 2024 Climate Change Reserve allocation.
And a follow-up to that. So the mover has claimed that we were doing everything we can. So do those 13 projects solve the climate crisis and render us free from doing any further action?
Director Lukasik, yeah, I don't want to put the director in a spot. I don't know if you would like to take the.
Sure.
Try and
Rephrase that.
Please.
There's $2.5 million allocated each year, which was a decision made earlier in this term, I believe. And the process would be to allocate this money to other projects in 2025 and beyond. Will there be projects that you foresee that we will be able to spend this money to have a similar effect as 2024, which was over an 8% reduction in emissions? Other projects that are going to reduce operating costs and save money in the tax levy? Do you foresee that there's more work we can do and we need to do as part of the climate crisis declaration we made?
Any questions? Director.
Through the Chair, absolutely. It was August of 2022 when Council supported Hamilton's climate action strategy, a very detailed mitigation plan and an adaptation plan that are community-wide. So there are lots of details in there around actions that we need to move on, both across the corporation of the City of Hamilton, but also beyond, across the community as well. So I think it is fair to say, yes, there is still lots of work to be done, and that climate change reserve funding is an important part of the supports that we need to innovate, to try new approaches, to accelerate where we can moving forward.
Thank you. One final follow-up. Just in that context, the City of Hamilton as a corporation and the City of Hamilton overall has an emission reductions plan by 2050, which the climate change reserves funding would help further. Could you just speak to that, what we're trying to do as a reminder to the public? Thank you.
Through the chair, yes, and I'll also acknowledge that this council has identified as a term of council priority the acceleration of climate action and GHG, greenhouse gas emission reductions. So that's certainly important. And I'll add to that, it's part of recommendations that were put before council in our annual update of last year. Recommendation was supported for our staff to go away and start to assess the feasibility of potentially accelerating that net zero by 2050 target, recognizing that this is a serious issue and it's getting more serious. So yes, we definitely need to do more, and it's important that there are aggressive targets in place to reduce those greenhouse gas emissions. But I would add too, to focus on adaptation, because we are already seeing impacts in our community from issues like extreme heat and flooding, and we know from all the climate scientists are telling us, Hamilton, for instance, is on the top 10 list of urban centres in Canada that will be struggling more and more with extreme heat over time. As one example, we know already that we have challenges with flooding issues, so there are definitely some serious adaptation challenges that we need to be paying attention to.
Thank you. I think that was my time.
It is. Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions, if I may. So the 2.5 million, that is an annual budget allotment, if you will. How do you and your team come to decide how to spend that money, and how do you and your team decide or assess the effectiveness of the spend after you've made the spend? Does that make sense?
Through the chair, thank you for that question, Councillor Clark. You may recall in the early days of our office, we came before council with some priority areas of focus. So that was one piece. And I will say that we continue as the Office of Climate Change Initiatives to tap into the Climate Change Reserve to enable us to move on those core areas of focus that we're moving forward as a team. We have also worked to refine an internal process for city-led initiatives. So in 2023, we did a first round of funding for a limited number of projects. In 2024, you'll note that list increased to 13 projects. And we developed a detailed internal process that relies on our Climate Change Initiatives Steering Committee. That's a director-level steering committee with representation from across all departments. There was an open opportunity for applications from staff across all divisions to request support from the Climate Change Reserve. And decisions were made in 2024 to ultimately allocate $2.5 million in Climate Change Reserve funding to that list of 13 projects. Moving forward in 2025, I can tell you that we will have another round for city-led initiatives. That's the intention. That'll be informed by some strategic prioritization, both through internal conversations, but also we've received input through our Climate Change Advisory Committee. So they were given an opportunity to review that list of 13 and express their views, and we're taking some of their input into consideration as we move forward. And then I'll also add, in 2025, we're very much focused on acknowledging that the strategy is community-wide, and we're looking at the importance of really leveraging community partnerships and figuring out a pathway forward to do more, to engage those community partners and hopefully to broaden our reach. Because I think one thing that that we're constantly recognizing is, while the corporation has the responsibility to lead on the mitigation and adaptation side of things, our role in the Office of Climate Change Initiatives is to oversee that the implementation, to facilitate the implementation, accelerate where we can the implementation of Hamilton's climate action strategy, which is a community-wide strategy again. So we're looking at, what kind of leverage do we have through partnerships that could be supported through the Climate Change Reserve. So I hope that answers your question.
Partially. The second part of the question was, how do we judge success? I'm paraphrasing it now down to something more succinct. But you've now, this past year, 13, the year before, I can't remember the number, but how do you review those projects, those proposals, the work, to see if the hopeful outcome has become the realized outcome?
Through the chair. So last year, we had for those city-led initiatives, that list of 13, we had a scoring system, and bear with me, we had projects put forward that fall into the adaptation side of things, others where it was more focused on climate mitigation, so greenhouse gas emission reductions. So in that case, our request to staff was, in your application, we want you to estimate what your greenhouse gas emission reductions will be through your action. On the adaptation side, it's a little bit more subjective, but there were questions around what kinds of benefits are we likely to see, what do they look like, and how many, where you can, if there are a number of people who are going to be helped through this effort, help us to understand that as well. And the reality is we have some projects that fall in between where they're both mitigation and adaptation. So we've tried our best through the application process to set out a scoring system and parameters that we can assess. And again, I'm going to say we continue to refine that process. So this year again, we'll fine tune, and we do that in consultation with our climate change initiatives, that internal steering committee. So we'll focus on making that happen. And I would add also that we request updates. So even with those 2023 projects, we are continuing to circle back to staff who are leading those efforts, and we're requesting updates so that we know that ultimately projects that were proposed are followed through on, and we're tracking progress with implementation, and ultimately wanting to ensure that what was put in front of us and the benefits that it was going to bring are ultimately being realized through those projects. So I hope that answers yours.
That last part of your answer is exactly where I'm going. I just want to have an understanding and a comfort level that the items that we are approving, that we're judging them on their success. So once they've been implemented, is it actually doing what we had hoped it would do? And if we are not judging those items, then this is going to be a very costly exercise over time if we don't know what's going to be a success and what's not. So thank you for that.
Councillor Crouch.
And thanks for Councillor Clark's questions, because it answers some of mine specifically about why the Office of Climate Change Initiatives is here, what work they do to coordinate all of this, what work they're responsible for doing. We have a steering committee, and the Climate Change Advisory Committee, of course, also informs this process. And we're kind of just getting going right now with this, right? So I know some of this was approved in the last term of council, but we finally have the Climate Change Advisory Committee in place. We finally have the Office of Climate Change Initiatives in place with full staff, and we're starting to see the results of that, and they're good. Look, we need independent staff to be able to do this work and to be able to collect up people from across the organization. That was a big issue that was identified here, is that we didn't have a centralized way of dealing with this. It's like why we have a housing secretariat. There are some issues that are so big, they require us to do that kind of collaboration and pull everybody from across the institution. Also, the big ask here, climate action. Not climate chit-chats, not putting something down on the table, not us having stuff come here and us say, oh yeah, that seems like a nice project, oh I like that one. It's climate action from climate professionals, and that's what we're trying to do with the reserve money, is put it on actual things. So people can say, yeah, I see that's happening. I see the city is trying to do something here, and take actual climate action. I heard a lot of questions from Councillor Pauls about, well, why do we have to do this and why do we have to do that? It's like, you know, that's not the time for those questions. You want to ask questions about this, you could ask them in 2024. You could ask them, every time we've had the reserve up for debate, you could have sat there and asked those questions then. I don't think it's fair to ask those questions now at the last possible minute or to cast shade on them, especially ones from a previous budget year. I also heard we can postpone this to the next year and we will be fine. Hey, Councillor Pauls, maybe you'll be fine. Maybe other people will be fine. But every single young person I've spoken to since I've been an elected official is saying that they're not going to be fine. That they don't feel secure about their future. That they're concerned about what the climate change things happening in front of their eyes will mean for them and their children. And they're really concerned about governments who don't take action. They don't think we'll be fine. None of this is fine. I won't be supporting this motion.
Councillor Alex Wilson.
Thank you. I have removed myself from the speakers list. If I could just quickly echo, I think we have a climate change advisory committee. They've been doing excellent work providing feedback on this work. I think there's a question, I don't know where these things come from. I don't know how they're reviewed. I think we have a really strong process that's only getting stronger. And I would also just add that the UN chairperson of the IPCC took the common refrain we've been hearing, delay is the new denial, to the next level. And in the year 2022, when we were talking about the state of climate action in the world, said delay is death. So going from beyond that kind of delay is denial argument. So just I think that's the conversation, not on for this delay. I think this is a strategic investment. It's a multi-year investment. We knew about it long before these budget deliberations happened, so there was also an opportunity to address this at a GIC or raise this concern earlier in this budget process as well, as this was baked into the budget.
Councillor Francis, followed by Councillor Caddison, then Councillor McMeekin. Councillor Francis.
Thank you, Budget Chair Wilson. Is there not a line where we take taxpayers' ability to pay into consideration? Why doesn't this council just spend $50 million on climate change? Why doesn't this council spend $100 million on climate change? Where is the line that's too much for our residents? This very council declared an affordability crisis. This council can't keep choking taxpayers and once again taking the responsibility away from the federal and provincial government. We can certainly look at ways to deal with climate change, but we can't make our residents poor in the meantime, in the process of doing that, which this council is currently doing. And you may be fine with your income there, Councillor Crutch, but you know who's not going to be fine? Pensioners and seniors in this city who are struggling. Thank you.
Councillor Caddison.
Sorry, I have some questions for the directors. Just for my own understanding and possibly some others. So in the motion, and I know because Councillor Cassar dealt with this, he said, it says, and I think I'll read it as I think it was supposed to be. We did not spend the $2.5 million in 2024 from the climate change action strategy. Is that correct?
Through the chair, I believe that the text reads, it makes reference to 2025, is that?
But I thought it was corrected to say 2024.
No, Councillor. The projects that were in a previous motion were already approved under the 2024 budget. The projects that the councillor spoke to in her opening remarks, those were part of those previously approved.
Okay, so then I'm assuming that the money in 2024 was spent correctly?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct, Councillor.
Thank you, that's the clarification I was seeking.
Councillor McMeekin.
Thanks, Chair Wilson. We have to, in my opinion, be more engaged with pointing direction rather than fingers. We've got some people in this world, sadly, in very high positions of power, withdrawing from the Paris Climate Accord, doing everything they can to drill baby drill and all the other sort of rhetorical stuff that we hear that we know is going to cause problems down the road. I've always felt when you only deal with the urgent, you don't have time for the important. And we decided that we would put money into a protected reserve for the climate office because we didn't want it to become a political football. We wanted to guarantee, assure that there would be resources there to identify what I think basically is low-hanging fruit, very practical examples. In fact, I'm very proud of the work that the office has done around the issues that they brought forward. They made a good case for those. I mean, we could talk about forest fires and flooding and all the macro issues, and they're all important. But we got a choice to make. Do we either contribute to developing a broader understanding of what we need to do as citizens of this planet, and thinking of, I got a 3-year-old grandson. I think of my 3-year-old grandson, what kind of world he's gonna. The other day he said, sharing is caring and caring is sharing. I thought, you know, he's picking up on that whole idea. So, but all of it aside, I'm pleased that we've got an advisory group, an action strategy, and practical examples of doing things that just make sense. I guess the final thing I want to say is, if picking up on Councillor Paul's words, if trees could talk, I think they'd say, you know, we really are in a crisis, and we really should stay the course, because this is the kind of thing that's going to the extent we can get involved, significantly involved, it's going to make a real difference to our community, to our province, to our country, to our planet. So I'm going to oppose the motion after saying that, and I want to compliment the climate office team for their very diligent and practically oriented recommendations to this motion. Thanks.
Councillor Beattie?
Thank you, Chair, and through you. As memory serves, there was an original motion from Hoover or something along that line that had a smaller reduction, 500,000 or something like that at some point. It's been revised. And it probably could have gone along with the smaller reduction, consistently voting in favor of trying to find savings along the way as we go. Here's my problem. I've spoken publicly during the allocation of the climate change funding reserve to a number of areas. I think I spoke at the end, and I kind of complained a little bit that we've only limited it to and defined it as a climate change fund and initiative, because there was a lot of innovation embedded within the proposals that came forward. We heard about solar panels on top of ambulances, that by switching from using the combustion engines to charge the batteries and using solar power, we actually elongate the life of the battery and reduce maintenance costs. So there's other things at play, and I'm big on innovation, and I struggle with just trying to take a total pause or a total skip for the year. Maybe we could have done with a little less, small reduction, but I don't want to send the signal that I don't want the city of Hamilton to innovate. In fact, I want more innovation, because I think that there's inherent cost savings and additional ancillary benefits to our employees, to our residents, to our city as a whole. I'm trying to stay out of the whole climate change as a concept debate. I'm trying to look at some ancillary benefits. I also have the great privilege of meeting with young people in my community routinely. I think that I have one of the only youth councils in the city, and they tell me over and over again what their priorities are, and this is something that that is a priority for them. I would have a great deal of difficulty standing before them in a few days and saying, oh, guess what I did? I voted to support ... It would be entirely contradictory. So back to the beginning, I commend the councillor, I commend all councillors for trying to make some tough decisions, for trying to bring cost savings to our residents. Some of them are a little more black and white, some of them are a little more gray for me, and unfortunately I won't be able to support as written.
Second time speaker and the mover is Councillor Pauls.
And I'm not going to say much, but I do want to say I really don't see the cost benefit for all these 13. But I do want to say that I have a smaller one put in, and that I was told it was out of order. I only have, because not all the money is being spent here. There is the electric sweeper for bike lanes that hasn't been purchased, $403,000. So I had that motion, and I also had the motion for the feasibility study of $550, would have saved us $1 million. And it was out of order.
Yep.
So when I asked the clerk and then I asked Mike, well, this is a better motion. I could postpone all of it to the 25 that has not been spent. So I don't know where we're at here, but I want to say something. This is timing and priority within the greater context. I want to tell you, I want to fix my kitchen, and I put money aside, and then my roof leaks, and I say, I can't touch my kitchen fund because that's my kitchen I want. And I let the roof leak. This is common sense. The taxpayers are saying the roof is leaking. We cannot afford our taxes. So let's take what we want, which to me, I looked at all 13, and I wish everyone would look. There's one that the pool heat reclamation, recreation.
Councillor, respectfully.
$225,000. I'm just saying, I really don't. I just want to say, it's all about timing and priority. And right now, it's reducing the taxes. Do I believe in climate change? Of course. You look outside. I do. I'm just saying we haven't spent the money. Feasibility study? Why can't the office do it? $550,000. How many more studies can we have? If you know that, we need the air conditioning case study. A lot more. So anyway, that is my point, and it seems like probably it's not going to pass, but I'll tell you, I did my very best. I looked at those 1,000 pages. I spent time, and it was very confusing. And I tried to figure it out, how to help my residents and how to help people. We can all afford our tax, everybody here, around the circle, everybody, all the staff can, but not the people that don't have the privilege of having jobs that pay that well. So thank you.
Councillor Clark, is that a Lacey ask, or are you on for a second time? Thank you. Okay, the motion is before, it's been duly moved and seconded. It is Councillor Paul's motion, and it is, I think, discussed significantly. So you're voting on Councillor Paul's motion, please and thank you. Thank you, that is defeated 5-11. Are there any further amendments to the proposed 2025 budget? Seeing none. The budget work for this council is now complete. We have considered amendments to the proposed budget, and those will be final with conclusion of today's meeting. Following this, the mayor has a process where she will consider any amendments over the 10-day period ending February the 22nd of this year. And should the mayor choose not to veto any of the amendments, the budget will be adopted as amended. To my colleagues, it's been a great privilege serving as your budget chair this year. We have an unfolding weather event, so I don't want to elongate this meeting any further, but I really appreciate your cooperation, your time, and the tenor, and it's been a great privilege. Thank you.
Are they going to bring more issue up tomorrow then?
Thanks very much. Again, thank you so much, Budget Chair Wilson and Vice Chair Danko, for all of the work that you put into this exercise. And we have lessons that we're going to learn, and I really appreciate all of the work of the staff and the councillors. We'll see where we end up from here. We are now in the part of the agenda that, we have item 8, which is items for consideration, and there are none. So we are on to motions, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm just looking to the clerks to be sure that I'm in the right spot, 9.1. Okay, so the first motion in front of us then is 9.1, inflation rate for 2026. Councillor Clark, would you please present your motion?
Thank you, Mayor Horvath. I have two motions now this evening. 9.1 and 9.7, given the weather and given that it's really not pertinent to today, can I ask that we put them over to the next GIC?
That would be very generous of you, and appreciate that. That's okay procedurally by the clerk. We do very much appreciate it.
I would like to do that, thank you.
Thank you. So then we're next on to 9.2. Amendment to item 4 of the Audit Finance Administration Committee Report 21-022, respecting investing in city roads and sidewalks infrastructure with Canada Community Building Funds, which was approved by Council December 15, 2021. Councillor Jackson, could you please present your motion?
Yes, Mayor Horvath, and I'd like to move mine because I'm 0 for 2 today, and I'm hoping with this housekeeping matter, I might be able to get a victory today. So it's moved by myself, seconded by Ward 14 Councillor Michael Spadafora. It's all there before you. The clerk has led me to believe this is a housekeeping matter, amending the CCBF funds to include a number of roads. I'll read the roads in Ward 6 by adding resurfacing and concrete repairs on Aries Court, on Sealac Court, on Homex Place, on Independence Drive, on Milky Way Drive to Upper Kenilworth. And again, the 3 Public Works temporary full-time equivalents be hired for up to 24 months at an estimated cost of $850,000, funded from the unallocated capital levy reserve number listed to deliver the CCBF projects listed here, and see that the procurement policy 4.9 consulting professional services requirements be waived to allow for the direct award of roster assignments above the $150,000 threshold for consultancy work pertaining to the CCBF project funds. Somehow, some way, there was an omission here. Dollars still are available, and these projects were just ready for the hopper once the money was discovered. So seconded by Ward 14 Councillor Mike Spadafora. and my fingers and legs are crossed. Thank you, Mayor Horvath.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. I don't see any speakers on the list. Your seconder was, I'm sorry? Who was your seconder, Councillor Jackson?
Ward 14,
Councillor Spatafora. Okay, I see no speakers on the list, so we'll go straight to the vote, please.
I just want to see who the one is going to be up there, Councillor Danko. Oh, thank you.
That carries 15 to 0. Congratulations, Councillor Jackson. Thanks so much. We're now on to item 9.3, which is one-time request for funding to subsidize renovation and upgrading costs associated with kitchen facilities at Interval House in Hamilton, Ward 14. Councillor Spatafora, would you please present your motion?
Thank you, Mayor. It's moved by myself, and I would ask that if you'd be willing to second the motion, that you would do that. Thank you. Whereas the Interval House of Hamilton provides emergency shelter, safety, planning, counseling, peer support, legal advocacy, system navigation, other support services for women with or without children that have experienced abuse or violence. Whereas the Interval House of Hamilton was established in 1986 as the first shelter of its kind in Hamilton dedicated to exclusively serve women and children who have experienced violence, abuse, and human trafficking. Whereas during the past 39 years, Interval House of Hamilton has grown to be a 22-bed emergency shelter and requires kitchen renovations and upgrades to properly support the more than 30 women and children that frequent at any given time. Whereas the required kitchen renovations and upgrades includes the replacing of existing range hood to incorporate a new electric convection oven, relocating a refrigerator and installing new electrical outlets, reconfiguring existing cabinetry and installing 2 sanitizers, installing a bulkhead, ductwork, and an exterior exhaust fan, and new flooring. Therefore, be it resolved that A, the costs associated with the renovation and upgrading for the kitchen at the Interval House of Hamilton be funded from the Ward 14 Discretionary Fund 330-230-9014 at an upset limit including contingencies not to exceed $10,000. That any funds allocated and distributed be exempt and not be counted toward any formula that restricts regular funding from the city, including the City of Richmond Fund or the one-time enhancement grant, i.e. the city's 30% formula for the years 2024 and 2025, and that the mayor and city clerk be authorized and directed to execute any required agreements and ancillary documents which such terms and conditions in a form satisfactory to the city solicitor. I will speak to it briefly. Mayor, I don't need to tell you the importance of this shelter in Ward 14. We've been there many a times. Unfortunately, we call it celebrating funding that comes from different people, whether that's LIUNA or different levels of government. It's a celebration of funding, but it's also a reminder of the reality of what some of the women and children in our community face. So it's an honor for me to be able to support the Interval House, Sue Taylor, all the individuals that work there to help these families. And I'm hoping that everybody can support this, and I can tell you that this shelter is never not at capacity. So the kitchen upgrade is the least that I can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spatafora. I don't see any speakers on the list. I would like to just say I'm honored to be able to second the motion, and we'll go straight to the vote then. That carries 15 to 0. Thanks very much. So we have, we're now on to item 9.4. So we have 9.4 is Councillor Danko. I believe there might be you just make sure we do things properly. This is something that might be addressed in closed. Am I correct? Because it's contractual.
Correct. So there were questions seeking some legal advice with regards to 9.4 and 9.6 and a request to go into closed session on those items. So presuming that both are being moved, we would go into closed session to deal with them. So we would potentially defer them until after close.
So everybody understands, we've got 9.4, 9.6, both of which will have, require some questions to be answered by legal staff. So that needs to be done in camera. We do no longer have, we have 9.5, so then it's 9.5. And so would it be the best thing to do then, to have 9.5 and then go into camera on the others, because we also have another item on the agenda that's an in-camera item. But I guess looking to the clerk, would it be worthwhile also then after doing 9.5 that we also consider doing the minutes before we go into camera?
So Mayor, I'd suggest if we do 9.5, we would then do the minutes in open. And I can advise that the confidential item 12.6 can be brought forward at a future meeting and withdrawn from this. We've had that understanding, so we won't need to go into closed session on that. It would just be on 9.4 and 9.6 to receive legal advice.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much. Everybody's following along there. That's great. Thank you to the staff for confirming that we could move that other in-camera item to the next meeting. So then we have financial relief to help offset the increased cost of municipal police service. 9.5, Councillor Danko, would you please present your motion?
Certainly. Moved by myself, seconded by anyone who would like to second. Councillor Francis, thank you. This is a request for financial relief to help offset the increased costs of municipal police services. Whereas the Ontario government will provide $77 million in financial relief to small and rural municipalities to help offset the increased costs of municipal police services provided by the Ontario Provincial Police. Whereas Solicitor General Michael Kresner stated the financial relief the Ontario government is proposing will help municipal leaders balance their budgets and invest in their communities while ensuring no change to the policing provided by the OPP that keeps families and businesses safe. Offset the increasing cost of police services. Whereas urban municipalities, such as Hamilton, have additional challenges such as homeless encampments, guns, gangs, drug trafficking, auto theft, and organized crime that require significant police resources and specialized equipment and personnel. Whereas residents overwhelmingly support police and request a stronger and more effective police presence in their neighborhoods. And whereas the Ontario government is a strong supporter of policing throughout the province, therefore be it resolved that the City of Hamilton request that the province of Ontario provide financial relief to the City of Hamilton due to budget impacts of the increasing cost of policing, that City Finance staff work with the City's manager's office, the Mayor's office, Police Services Board, and the Chief of Police to quantify a specific financial relief request, and that this direction be circulated to the Ontario Big City Mayors and Association of Municipalities of Ontario. Speaking to this, first of all, Mayor, I'd like to thank you for your efforts. I know you've already been advocating at the organization level through Big City Mayors and other associations, making sure that the province is aware of the impacts of the increasing cost of police on municipalities. You know, the increase in this year's budget for policing for Hamilton is one of the lower in the province. We've seen other municipalities over 10% increase. So I think we need to put that into context for, at a provincial scale. And my understanding from our municipal police budget and police budgets across the province is the vast majority of the increase in costs is through staffing. So for the City of Hamilton, 90% of the police budget is determined by staffing, by collective agreements. And that's the same whether it's a municipal police force or OPP or RCMP, it doesn't matter which police force, the impacts on the budgets are the same. So I'm really hopeful that this is something that perhaps we can actually agree with the province on, with our provincial representatives. Our provincial representatives, to give them credit, have been very supportive of the police. So I'm really hopeful that this is something that they can advocate for at the provincial level to actually bring some relief to City of Hamilton taxpayers while supporting what is, I'm hoping that we're all in alignment on, is a need for an increased and stronger police presence in the neighborhoods, and overall, you know, coupling that with relief to municipal taxpayers. So, you know, through this motion, it doesn't set aside a specific amount, but this year's increase in the police budget is just over $12 million. That's about 1% of the levy. So any amount that the province might be able to come forward to support police would directly come off the levy, be very much appreciated by municipal taxpayers, and I think would provide our provincial representatives with a very popular, very well supported and big win for everyone throughout the City of Hamilton. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Janko. Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you. There is precedence for Councillor Danko's motion. The provincial government in the past has provided funding to police departments, usually for equipment, but also for guns and gangs and specific programming. It's important that we highlight, and they know this, but we need to continue to remind them that we are experiencing a real challenge with guns and gangs in this municipality. We are experiencing a significant challenge that is not spoken enough, often enough in this municipality, which is human trafficking, and as well as drug trafficking. So those are four big ones that our police department spends a great deal of time and resource battling. It would be helpful if the province understood that challenge that this municipality is facing and helped us with some additional funding. Thank you for bringing this motion, Councillor Danko.
Thanks very much, Councillor Clark. I don't see any further speakers. Councillor Crutch, please.
Yeah, I'll be very brief, just to say that I don't agree with all Councillor Danko's reasoning for this, but I'm going to support this because the province wants to get involved in a discussion with the city, the chief of police, mayor's office, whomever, about the province taking on some of the funding here, taking it out of the city's responsibility. Happy to hear the result of that, and that's what the therefore be resolved clauses say, is that that's the conversation that Councillor Danko is asking to have. So happy for a conversation to happen and see the results of it. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Crutch. Councillor Nan.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Also happy to support the motion, specifically in the context of item C. Just wanted to identify to the mover as well as council that at the FCM board, as well as our federal advocacy days in Ottawa in December, this was an issue that was raised in terms of the costs that municipalities bear and that are paid for through our tax levy versus those services that municipalities carry out that serve all of Canadians. And from that perspective, the municipal growth framework and the municipal framework changes that have been advocated through the FCM as well as AMO do integrate policing costs as one of those pieces that would be really important to have financed in an appropriate way versus increases to municipal tax levy. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Nan. Councillor Pauls, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say, of course, I support this. Anything that we can do to help reduce our costs is always welcome. But I remember the chief coming, I guess, a week and a half ago, and he said that we do get some provincial funding, and especially with social navigator, risk, codes, NCRRT. So we do get some funding already, but if this could bring some more funding, I'm all for it. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pauls. I don't see any further speakers on the list, so we have a duly moved and seconded motion, and we'll go to the electronic vote, please. That carries 16-0. Thanks very much. We have no notices of motion. Oh, I'm sorry.
Point of order, Mayor?
Yes, absolutely, Councilor.
Did we, in the early part of today, talk about putting 7.01H, identifying areas of improvement, efficiency, and effectiveness down into motions?
Yes, Councillor Clark said he would put that in abeyance till the next meeting, considering we have a snowstorm in front of us.
Got it, thank you, sorry.
That's fine, no, that's better have the clarity. Okay, so we don't have any notices of motion. Statements by members. As is the custom, if folks have a statement, please identify on the list. And if not, we'll keep moving. Any statement by members, folks?
It's snowing.
Yeah, I had a bunch of things to say, but I think that it's best for us to kind of move on in the spirit of Councillor Clark. I don't see any speakers, and so we'll talk about those things next time around. Nothing personal, Councillor. Nothing personal. But thank you very much. Then we're then now going to deal with the minutes, the private and confidential minutes of closed sessions January 2nd, 22nd, 2025 and January 23rd, 2025. So we have a motion to approve the closed session council minutes of those two dates. As Chris said, of course, if there's a problem, we move it. So that's moved by Councillor Nan and seconded by Councillor Wang. So we'll go to the vote then on those. It's a show of hands vote. Thanks very much. That carried. So then we have more closed session minutes. We have PLC 25-002, GIC 25-002, AFA 25-002. May I have a motion to approve those committee closed session minutes as presented, moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Kassar. And again, we'll go to a show of hands vote, please. Thank you very much. That carries. So now we're going to go to the moving into closed session to consider items 9.4 and 9.6. Thanks very much. Might I please have the motion then to move into closed session to consider items 12.6 and 12.6A respecting improving, well, no, that is not one actually.
Skip down to item 9.4 in the same paragraph.
Yes, I'm sorry, Councillor Nagel?
I'm just thinking since 9.4 and 9.6 were determined not to be budget meeting motions, it's perhaps not necessary that they be decided on today, so we can bump those to a future meeting, I think.
So then we therefore don't have a need for a closed session by the looks of it, because the other item, which is 12.6 and 12.6A, has also been moved to another meeting. So thank you very much. That's quite helpful, considering there's a safety issue that's unfolding outside. So then we will go to, where are we now? We're going to the, I'm sorry?
Bylaws.
Bylaws, here we are, 13. Councillor Kassar, may I please have the motion on the bills?
Yes, of course, the ordinance moved by me, seconded by previous Deputy Mayor Councilor Mark Patterson. The bills numbers 25-022 to numbers 25-026 be passed, and that the corporate seal be affixed thereto, and that the bylaws be numbered, be signed by the mayor and the clerk to read as follows, shown on the agenda.
Thanks very much. All those in favor of the bills? No. It's an electronic vote because it's really formal, the bills. Say that.
I feel like if I was ever or I'd make so many jokes. Is anybody speaking tomorrow like that?
And that carries 14-0. There being no further business, then the meeting is hereby adjourned. Please be safe on the roads home, folks. Please be careful on the sidewalks and get home safely. Thank you all very much for a very productive
You're staring down the.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely what the system was, make sure that we're getting.
Careful going home, guys.
She randomly developed their own tools. And she just like stuck her hands around her legs. So I'm just gonna look at some touchy eyes now. Which, sorry. I mean, yeah, no, if by the end of the years it's just council, I mean, she's consistent on this, she's consistent in her nature. There was, what is it? Yeah, I can think. If I had to do another action, I'd have 2 seats for tonight's.
No, I just wondered.
Yeah. No, that's, yeah, no, I can have you guys.
You don't think I'm supposed to watch it, do you? Sorry? You don't think I'm supposed to watch it? Still like.
Sure, I think we.
Oh, I can say it.
Well, I agree. Yeah.
As soon as it snows.
So I just need the yellow. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, I go through and do those things.
I would just do that I mean, and if they say, I'm really sorry, I, gotta get this done before I try to get in my vehicle.
Yeah, no, I know. So there are problems with the just on.
Oh, right.
Yeah. No, they. What? I thought this thing was tonight. I said, how many fucking other things do you need to do? And I asked him, it's square. The forecast is there. But as a side note, you could blame me for the fact that they didn't get outside. They didn't get too much internet because I had the camera going today live. Yeah, it's like with Terry Whitehead with the camera. I used to, the camera that click. All right, I think I'm here tomorrow. Oh, it's Committee of Adjustment tomorrow. Yeah.